Hello, welcome everyone. This is episode 8 of Give Freedom a Chance, the podcast from the Libertarian Party UK, where we do our best to provide a libertarian alternative to whatever is going on in the world and help you navigate this troubling time we're all living. Thank you all for being here in what we hope is going to become the weekly appointment. We are doing our best to just provide the regular schedule because the algorithm actually hates when we miss an episode like it happened last week, but we're getting better at it. So hopefully this will become a regular appointment to our freedom-loving people, not just in the UK, but all around the world. I'm your host, Luca Bocci. I've been a journalist since 1990. But don't help me down to it. One of the good guys, so to speak. So, as you've seen from the thumbnail and from our post on social media, today we will tackle a very big top subject right now that is actually what the hell is going on in America. As we've growing up, we've all considered the United States the shining city on the hill, the home of freedom, land of the brave, home of the free. And lately, we've been hearing so much about it, so much disinformation and stuff that most people are starting to wonder, is the land of the free actually free? What the hell is going on? So provided that the media, the mainstream media, or what they used to be mainstream media, they are doing their darnest to just spread rumors around, we tried to just get a different perspective on the subject. That's why we are delighted to have a couple of libertarian fellow podcasters, and one of them is also a representative, elected representative, just to be honest, and to just give an additional perspective. Obviously, we will discuss it. If you have anything to ask, just drop us a note in the comments. We'll do our best to reply them all. And obviously, just this introduction is already long enough. I'm just having to have all my guests come back here and turn the microphone on because otherwise it would be rather annoying. So again, we have the president of the Libertarian Party UK, Alex Zychowski. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Luca. Great to be back.
Okay, lovely to have you. And obviously we have two friends that we thank them because it's very early days back where they live across the pond. And so we have Andy Koons. And hi, Andy is podcaster, and their podcast, obviously follow them because they are quite hilarious, if I may say so. It's called We Love the State, and very tongue-in-cheek. Excellent title, by the way. Hi, Andy.
Hey, how's it going? It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And on the other bottom, right down in below me, we have Ben DeJong, and he's from Michigan. He's an elected councilman in the local area. He's obviously a member of the Libertarian Party. And first of all, congrats on getting elected, because the more people we have, the more we will be able to show everyone that a different way of doing business is not only possible, but actually kind of works. So, hi, Ben.
Good morning. Well, good afternoon to all of you, but good morning to us.
Yeah, it's really weird because we are in three, actually, I think in 4 different time zones. Because so we have, I'm Central European time because I'm streaming from Tuscany, and Alex is in Sussex, if I'm not mistaken, and is on the Greenwich Mean Time. Andy, you're Central or Eastern?
I'm actually also in Michigan.
Oh, yeah. So you're both there. So it's only 3.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Okay, great. So, gentlemen, just wanted to just get straight to the subject. Our question that we have been posing ourselves is that we've been reading and watching a lot of stuff, and people are just freaking out and saying, oh, my God, America is going crazy. They're going autocratic. They are, taking away freedoms and stuff. And then again, you read something different and you think, well, things are not exactly like that. It's just that there is something very, very dodgy going on in some states, as we've seen from Minnesota yesterday. I think last night we were seeing something pop up in Los Angeles, of all places, and so I don't really know how to frame this, because to be honest, the situation is very difficult, especially if you're watching it from a libertarian point of view, because obviously we're not big fans of the state. I may think that this is quite the less the state there is, the better. But again, we're not big fans of illegality and people that are, stealing money from the taxpayers and wasting money and profiting from these kind of things. So I think we're in a bit of a conundrum. And how do you see the situation from your side? So what is going on? I don't know.
I think, well, especially in the American Libertarian Party, I think that we are really grappling with the question of like, how do libertarians deal with borders? How do libertarians deal with immigration, whether that's restrictive or otherwise? It's it's kind of a difficult question to answer. It's a difficult question to really find a hill to die on and still retain your libertarian principles. So with a lot of the things happening in the United States, like we've had a couple Americans that have been shot by ICE, and whether those people were crazy blue-haired leftists or red-pilled right-wingers, ultimately it doesn't matter. These are Americans who were killed by their own government, and so I think for a lot of American libertarians that it's been a difficult pill to swallow because there have been a lot of problems that have come from virtually open immigration over the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years. And we're kind of seeing, especially with the Somali daycare scandal in Minnesota, it's caused a lot of big problems, and now it's almost like the problem is so big that like, if we want to deal with it, we're going to see bad things happen. Now, is that any justification for like an American being killed by their own government? Absolutely not. I think that Dave Smith, which if any of your audience has ever watched me before, I'm a total simp for Dave Smith. All right. I'm completely unabashedly open about that. But he had, I think, the best take on this, which is, listen, they should have went in there working with the local law enforcement. There's been nothing but performative violence shown on social media of ICE officers going in and beating people up, beating up Americans, and it's that's not the correct way to go. That's a very Gestapo way to handle this, and that's a direction I don't want to see my country go down.
Yeah, I know. And so, Ben, I think that this is actually something that we are all struggling with, because in reality, the whole borders idea, the whole immigration idea, is very controversial. It's one of the hot topics in libertarian circles and stuff. But at one point, when you're seeing that the government is facilitating the ingress of people, of actually millions of people, and then it happened something like it happened a couple of days ago in Spain, where the government decides that 500,000 illegals will get a document, and then there will be on an expedited path to citizenship, so that they can stop the far right. At this point, you say, hey, hold on, we're not a state, laws don't matter here. Because if the government is the first one that is saying, yeah, in reality, if you want to get to the US, if I want to get to the US, I have to go to the consulate, I have to present my documentation, I have to prove that I have means to sustain myself, and then I need to prove that my profession is in need in the country, and then I have to go through one of these routes and then get an immigration lawyer and spend, I don't know, $20,000 in order to be able to get a visa so that I'm able to work in the United States. And then another person can just waltz around the Canada border, cross in and say, oh, I'm an asylum seeker. And that's it. It's done. So what is the situation? How do you solve this? When someone is not following the rules, and then you say, well, some rules have to be respected. We can all agree that the way that the authorities have been handling it, ICE, not only but Border Patrol, because Greg Bovino, and so the guys were from Border Patrol, and they're specialized in fighting against the cartels. One might wonder why the hell were they in Minneapolis, where, as far as I know, there are no cartels aside from the Somali scammers. I don't know. So this is an overreach, but at the same time, you have to tackle the issue some way, because otherwise, if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. Especially if you have welfare state and spending that is beyond all reason.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the unfortunate piece or part of the immigration debate has really kind of split the libertarian base. I'd almost say it's almost a 50-50 split. I haven't really kind of gauged on, what the divide is, but there is, the camp that is saying, well, government should have no say over borders, and freedom of movement is an individual right, and therefore the immigration debate is over. The other side is obviously more of the, it's a form of trespassing. We are taxpayers. So public land is our land because we pay for it. And therefore, anybody crosses the border is, technically trespassing. I guess it's a good debate to have over like what role the government or any government should have over borders. What unfortunately I see is happens all too often from the libertarian side of things is there's a lot of libertarians that argue from the point of a perfect libertarian utopia perspective and not where we are today. And so I think a lot of times the debate over borders and over immigrants is not a very, I wouldn't say good faith debate, but it's not a debate that's rational, because there's a lot of libertarians that always argue from ideal and not from reality. And so I think that's where we just don't have very good messaging as a party, and because we don't have good consensus. Again, from my perspective, I think we have to have borders. Without borders, you don't have a country. Without a country, you don't have representation. You don't have it is kind of that. It's an interesting debate to have, because again, we don't like the state, but at the same time, there has to be some rule of law, and who's going to uphold that debate. So it's it's an interesting thing to be a libertarian and to try to find that where is that happy medium of how much state is worth having. And this is it's very divisive, and it's just unfortunate. I just watched Cenk Uygur was on with Tucker Carlson, and he really talked about how so much of our problems are made up by mainstream media, just left versus right. And I think when you see some of the violence in the United States with ICE, there is this idea that the left and the right, they look at each other as less than. And so it's justified or it's okay to beat or kill because they're the others. And it's really, really disgusting to kind of just watch how that can be weaponized against a people and dividing a country. And something that Andy and I, we talk about quite a bit on our podcast is, how do we, where does this lead the United States to? Do we get to a point where, I think if you take this and you push it out, 10, 20 years, there's a good potential for another civil war, because the two sides have been so demonizing each other that they just don't even look at each other as equal or as almost as humans. So it is very it's a very scary time. I'm a big proponent for national divorce, for the breakup of the states into smaller sovereign countries. But I don't know where this leads. It's not a great time to be, but it's at the same time kind of taking yourself out of it and looking in. Thankfully, here in Michigan, we haven't seen the riots, or we haven't seen ICE, on a large level. So we're able to look at Minnesota and other areas outside looking in. But it is something that could happen here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've seen, the role of the mainstream media, it's obviously, they're doing everything they can just to get ratings. Because nowadays, I think that the rhetoric has become so inflammatory that once you raise the noise level, in order to be heard, you have to scream louder. And so you have someone like DNC chair Jeffries yesterday, where he was openly calling for the head of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, to be gunned down. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, this is not the kind of rhetoric that you have in, not just in a civilized society, but in general. So the norms of politics are completely broken down. I've been following professionally as a journalist US elections and US politics since more than I care to remember, probably. I still remember, Ross Perot and the other stuff, and McCain and the presidential elections and so on. So if someone had told me back, if someone had told me back in 2000 that I would have heard a major representative of the Democratic Party openly calling for a member of the government, of a Republican government, to be killed, I would just say, no, you're shitting me. Seriously.
Well, especially if he's calling for Kristi Noem to be killed. Do we know that this guy isn't just, 3 dogs stacked on top of each other in a trench coat? Because her relationship with dogs is...
Okay, the former governor of North Dakota just made a big boo-boo when she said, and then again, I've read so many things that say, because none of us have been, I don't know about you, but I haven't been born in a farm, so I don't know how you treat animals, even dogs, in a farm. And I've read some conservatives saying, well, this is just because if you are a city dweller, you tend to think of dogs as, companions, parts of the family. If you are in a farm, a dog is useful. And if a dog attacks someone, that's a liability. And as much as it breaks your heart, you have to put it down. But then again,
just to kind of,
sure.
Sorry, I kind of veered this whole conversation towards dogs, but so I did grow up on a farm, and we had chickens, we had cattle, and there is sort of this unwritten rule about farm dogs, where if they get into your chickens, if they kill one of your chickens, they now recognize that as like a food source, like, oh, these things are made of meat, and so it's. It sucks. It's really sad, but it's like if a dog gets into your chickens, you either have to get rid of your chickens or you have to get rid of that dog, because that's always going to be a food source for them, and so with chickens, you get eggs out of it. Dogs don't lay eggs. They don't provide food. They're like a work animal, and so it tends to be a lot easier to just put that dog down and get a new dog, and try to train them to stay away from chickens. But once a dog gets a taste of chicken, it's over.
It's gone. I know. The thing that I was thinking in terms of I've always been more, I was a member of the Tea Party back in 2010, because not many people may know, but also Italy had their own version of the Tea Party, because we are taxed enough already. And I've traveled to the south of the United States and had some speaking engagements and stuff, because I was trying to warn people, don't go down this road, because otherwise you will end up like Europe. And we've seen that, we've been unsuccessful. America has ended up like Europe, because otherwise you don't get $19 billion stolen from a bunch of, scammers that happen to be Somalis. So the whole point is that I was looking at what the things that Javier Milei is doing in Argentina, where he was kind of saying, hey, you want to come to Argentina? Great, awesome. I'll give you a work permit. You can come here. But there are going to be 2 things. You're not going to get any benefit at all. You're paying for your own health insurance, you're paying for your own pension, you're paying for your own everything. And by the way, you don't get to become a citizen, because you're here just to work. You're part of the community. And I think that the government in Denmark yesterday just announced that people are coming in from the Middle East, they are coming in from Africa, they are not working because we have a generous welfare system. And so we decided, you're not getting any of it. So if you're not paying into the system, you're not getting any of it. And I think this is maybe a libertarian way to solve the whole immigration subject, because I don't know, Alex, because I think that in the UK, the situation is gone way beyond what anyone might think. I think in London, what is that? 80% of all public housing, council houses have been occupied by non-citizens. So if I wanted to go back to London, because I lived in London for 10 years, if I wanted to go back to London and say, well, I'm not earning enough, I paid for 10 years into the system, so I may want to get a council house. And they say, oh yeah, good luck with that. No, you're never going to get it. So you commute a couple of hours a day. Most people live in Sussex if they can afford that. If they're richer, they live in Kent or somewhere else. So you are pushing out the citizens because you're providing everything for newcomers immediately as they come here. I don't think it's sustainable. What could be a libertarian solution to that?
Well, absolutely, it's not sustainable at all. I consider myself a refugee from London. I left about 5 years ago, and as you rightly mentioned, one of the only ways anyone can afford to live there anymore is to receive council housing. And as you stated, a huge chunk of that is going to foreign citizens. Andy and Ben spoke earlier. We've framed this immigration debate from a libertarian perspective. It's very difficult to come to a consensus, and obviously there has been disagreement. But we actually had just this morning a party member meeting on updating our immigration policy in advance of the May elections. So if I could just throw in an advert, if I could, to any members watching, remember those meetings are open to all of the membership. Just send us an email and we let them know what time, what day. And we had this exact same discussion that we've just been having here. We are libertarians. We don't like the state. But then there's the pragmatism that Ben alluded to that needs to come into play. So we don't live in a libertarian utopia, certainly not in the UK. I would argue the US is still closer to one than we are, but as we've seen, significant problems. And, you have to ask yourself, if you have open borders, are you letting in, first there's the cultural argument. And I don't think it's controversial to suggest that a large number of the kind of people coming to Europe are coming from highly collectivist societies, where their loyalties are to their tribe, their ethno-linguistic group, their religion, and concepts such as the rule of law and individual liberty are foreign to them. And then we see these communities essentially ghettoize themselves, not integrating on a large scale. So there's that cultural argument that if we have open borders, are we not in a way putting libertarianism under threat? Let's put that aside for a moment. And the other argument is economic and property rights. So when you have, in the United Kingdom, we've got 1.5 million foreign nationals on universal credit. That's about 1 in 50 of the entire population of the United Kingdom are foreign nationals in receipt of state benefits. It is completely and utterly unsustainable. So the only solution is if you cut off the welfare state, that deals with that problem, okay? There shouldn't be benefits available for those who haven't first paid into the system. And then equally, if you abolish the welfare state, you will naturally see a significant reduction in the number of people trying to come to the UK. And once you've done that, then we can start looking more towards the libertarian utopia that we mentioned earlier. Because I don't think if you didn't have a welfare state, if you didn't offer people money to move to your country, then naturally the numbers will fall through the floor, including from those more collectivist societies. So the issue is deal with the socialists first, and then you can have a much wider libertarian debate about open borders. Because at the end of the day, a border is an instrument of the state, and we want the state to be as minimal as possible.
Yeah, I think that right now I've seen, obviously this just exudes a bit from the whole conversation about immigration. I think in America especially, because in the past few years people have been trying to say that the UK was built by immigrants, and then you realize, as Konstantin Kissing from Trigonometry says, that in the last 10 years there have been more people coming into the UK than there have been since the Battle of Hastings in 1066 to 1950. So just a comparison, a scale, and say, okay, the UK was not built by immigrants. America was. But then again, other people say, no, America wasn't built by immigrants. It was built by settlers. So people that came from Europe, the overwhelming majority came from Europe. And because they said, this is a completely unclaimed land and we want to build it up. And they did, with massive sacrifices and that. But then again, you see the comparison between the newcomers, the Somalis or whatever, people coming from Nigeria and so on, and people that came from, I don't know, Italy or Spain. I think the biggest group in America is people from German heritage. So German Americans had the overwhelming majority. Then English Americans, well, you don't say English American because America is England, by the way. Italians and Germans, they are not immediately recognizable aside from their surname. Because when they came to America, they said, I don't want my children to be ostracized by the society. So I will teach them mainly English. I will make them believe in what America means. That is freedom, personal responsibility, limited government, and so on. And the freedom to just pursue your dreams, the American dream. But the American dream is not just make money, is make money as part of a society that has a certain set of values that up until the 1960s used to be universally shared, because everybody knew the Declaration of Independence, everyone knew what the Constitution meant. Now, after 50 plus years of constant work into public education and so on, where they've taught people to hate the color of their skin and to think that just because they are brown, that makes them better, the whole system is falling down. So I'm just thinking to myself, I say, why have America abandoned the idea of the melting pot, which was the foundation of its success? Because otherwise, it doesn't work. You don't put people from so many different extractions, from Russia, from Poland, from Scandinavia, from Denmark, from the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, France, Spain, everyone together, and then create something new if you don't have a set of values. And the foundation of America, as far as I can tell, I've been studying a lot of American stuff, is a libertarian foundation. Because the founding fathers, they were not all about, the government must do everything. They were, the government, stay in your lane, we will do our own thing, please leave us be. So I don't know, fellas, am I missing something? Or why has America abandoned the foundation of its success?
At the risk of sounding like the wildly right-wing guy in the room, I think what we're seeing now in the States is like the peak stage of the melting pot. I don't know how much to America's success I would attribute to the idea of the melting pot. I mean, a lot of the most amount of economic growth that we had, I don't think it had to do with our immigration policy. I think it had to do with the fact that we didn't have a central bank. Andrew Wilson got rid of got rid of our Federal Reserve after the Civil War. And then from then until 1913, we had just uncharted growth economically. There was some perhaps more open immigration there, but a lot of the immigration was very Christian, and so there were already, a certain set of values. A lot of Christians coming in, a lot of the Irish that we let in, they had some hard times in the beginning, but, for the most part, we have a Christian or a Catholic sort of base set of values, and so I think that's why back then the melting pot idea worked the way that it did, because, we have those sort of deeper values that we share. But I don't think our immigration policy then had anything to do with our success. I think that had to do with the fact that we didn't have a central bank until 1913.
Yeah. So Ben, any idea on that? Because I've seen that the whole point is that I've been reading commentary on the Constitution where they say that the American Constitution is probably the most consequential political document in the history of mankind, but it was designed to work in a society that held certain values as fundamental and indisputable, and that is Judeo-Christian traditions. So as long as you had people coming in and they were saying, well, of course, freedom of speech is important. Of course, freedom of movement, freedom of religion is important. Everything was working. The system broke down when you had people that are lured in with the idea, come in and it will be like being in Somalia, but you will get more money. And then obviously, when you don't have shared values, the whole system breaks down.
Well, kind of to tack onto what Andy was talking about, the United States was really built with so many different layers of government. So even from my own example, so I sit on my local village council. We have village councils, we have township councils, we have county councils, then we have state. So we have so many different layers where one is constantly battling with the other. And in that kind of a feudalism system of different and various government entities, looking out for themselves and for the people that they represent, it slows government down dramatically. Now, that can be, I think most of the time that's good, but there are times, obviously, even for myself sitting on a village council, where it can be frustrating because it's like, well, this is clearly what needs to happen, but you have to go through so many different layers to actually move forward. So the United States as a system moves very slow, and I think that degrades and reduces the chance of tyranny. So I think that's really helped us as a country because of the complexity and the shared authority structures that we function in. Also, America is huge. Kind of back in the day, one of the immigration policies that I've always been a big proponent of is sponsorship. So to immigrate to the United States, and a lot of churches in the United States were integral into immigration because the church and church member families would sponsor immigrants to come and live with them. And so there was the church and families were who originally supported immigrants. And to immigrate, you had to have that connection and that family and or church that was saying, we will take care of them. We will find them housing. We will get them jobs. It wasn't the state. And it's amazing, the more and more the state takes that responsibility away from people and from private institutions, the more the state just continues to grow, and the dependency, it becomes more on, instead of being dependent on your local village, your local church, your family, your greater family, the dependence now is to the government. And I think that is obviously purposeful from a governmental standpoint, is they want dependency. I mean, just look at, our homeless in so many of our big cities, that's not on accident, that's on purpose. And so that's where I think more and more people need to wake up to the values that we talk about in the Libertarian Party of the individual responsibility. And it's not, I think there's definitely a lot of negative connotations to libertarians, as the fact that we're just all selfish narcissists. All we care about is individual liberty. We don't care about groups. And I don't know if we do a good job of kind of pushing back against that and say, no, we're fine with groups as long as those groups are voluntary. And does it suit the individual, or are they being pushed into a group that they are not, they don't want to associate with? And so it's to Andy's point, it's a slippery slope. How far we've come, even in the United States, but I think in the world, especially when it comes to immigrations, it works when it's a trickle. It doesn't work when it's a flood. And we've been experiencing the flood for the 4 years of the Biden administration, and you just can't bring in millions of people when it's hundreds. they can slowly assimilate. But millions, there's no assimilation because they're surrounded by their group, their tribe, and there's no need or no really push for them to
There's no incentive.
incentive for them to assimilate.
I think it's the same thing that we're seeing. Just getting back to the UK for a bit. I don't want to just say my own thing. I moved to the UK in 2011. January 2011, I had a job at a UK company that was a media company that was producing content for Italy. And you're thinking, why the hell didn't they open up a newsroom in Italy? Because Italy is a bureaucratic nightmare, and they were paying so much more tax, so much more regulations, and you would have a contract for life. You wouldn't be able to fire anyone. So they decided to move me and a bunch of other people from all across Europe to London to produce content that was then sold to the other countries. And all of us, so we were from various European states, but not only, we had people from China, people from Indonesia and Brazil and so on. So we were all in, and I was not meeting any other Italian. I was living in London. I was living with my brother because my brother moved in London as well. He's still living in London as a geologist because in Italy there were no opportunities and they were bringing there. As a member of the European Union, I was able to work there. I wasn't meeting with Italians. I wasn't promoting Italian policies. I wasn't thinking that the UK government should spend money to build an airport in my region in Tuscany so that people from Tuscany living in London would be able to do that. Pakistanis are doing that. They are pressuring the UK government to spend money to build an airport in Kashmir so that they will be able to get home earlier. This is dysfunctional. So they have, not all immigration is the same. French people living in London, there are a lot of them, but they don't make a group. They are not just hanging together with French people. They are integrated in the UK. They have UK friends. They meet other people. And the whole point I'm seeing is that not all immigration is the same. There are some cultures that are more in line with others. They're easier to assimilate. Others are completely not. But I think, Alex, the whole point I'm seeing is that, especially with Starmer government, when he's not in China taking orders from Xi Jinping, because the Starmer bot obviously loves to go there and be humiliated, by the way, because he's been humiliated by the PCC, but the CCP, but obviously he doesn't care. The whole point is that they're trying to just destroy the local authorities, the councils. So they're saying, oh yeah, we'll skip elections. They did last year. They're probably doing it again. And they are making them bigger and bigger so they are easier to control. But this goes against the foundation of British Constitution, because Britain has always been a place where your council was important because it was making the decisions that are nearer to you. Instead, no, they want to centralize. They want to keep authorities away from the electorate. Again, just to say, I didn't know who my local MP was, the member of parliament in my area. I didn't know who he was. And he wasn't someone that lived where I lived. He was just CCHQ. So the Conservative Party decided, oh yeah, we'll get this guy here because this is a safe council or whatever. So I think this is just done purposefully.
Yes, I'll just jump on your point there, Luca, about it being unconstitutional. The UK has a lot to be jealous of the US for, higher GDP, freedom of speech, and one of the things that I'm most jealous about is that codified constitution. So cancelling elections is not actually unconstitutional in the UK because we don't have one. And that is the number one core policy of the Libertarian Party UK. We need a written constitution to prevent precisely the kind of authoritarianism that you've just described. So I don't know if our American guests are aware that our Prime Minister has literally cancelled elections in the last few months. There's supposed to be, I think it was about 12, 16 councils like that up for election in May. Only about half of them are actually going ahead. Now, the supposed justification is restructuring. They're going to make the councils bigger, move the borders around. You've had similar things in the States. But you just don't cancel elections in a liberal democracy. I find it astonishing at how little pushback there's been here. You just don't do that, full stop. There is no excuse. And we spoke earlier about the mainstream media pushing narratives left versus right. In the UK, we have an even worse situation. We have state media. We are forced to fund the BBC. And when reporting on this, the BBC, they chuck it on their website, little paragraph halfway down the page. Oh, by the way, some council elections have been cancelled. In any normal country, that would be the main story, and there would be riots on the street. So we're seeing these stories deliberately pushed down by state media that we are forced to fund. So it really is quite a terrifying situation. So we need a constitution urgently to ensure that these things don't happen again in the future. So that is the main thing that we need to be going for. But as we've seen with what Andy and Ben have been saying, unfortunately, a constitution doesn't always safeguard against the state, as we've seen with ICE.
I know. This is the main problem that I've seen, because the point is that I've read some analysis and saying that the point of the United Kingdom not having a written constitution is a blessing and a curse, because on one hand, it may well open the doors to what Tony Blair did, which is a complete destruction of the British way of doing politics, because all the authority has been taken away from the parliament and given to unelected quango, so quasi non-governmental organization, which is a nonsense, because either you're government or you're not government. You can't be a quasi non-governmental, which makes no sense, but they have a lot of power. So again, you're saying, well, I want to make a budget. Oh no, you can't do that, because there is the budgetary office that says that no, you can't do that. And I want to change interest rates. Oh no, Bank of England is independent. It says you cannot do that, because otherwise we will not be able to sell the treasury bonds. And then again, the power is taken away from the parliament. But at the same time, if a government, let's say a libertarian government, comes in, we will not have the problems that Javier Milei is having in Argentina, because we will be able, if we have a majority, to push everything through. We're saying, oh yeah, the Equality Act doesn't work, destroyed, and quangos, yeah, gone in a moment. So the parliament is still sovereign, but it's been, power has been taken away. But you don't need a constitutional law. I've been reading lately that there is a proposal to just abolish the 17th Amendment to the US Constitution, which, for people that are not constitutional experts, I'm not, but I've been reading a bit on that, is the one that says that the members of the Senate are elected by the people, but it wasn't this way, because in the beginning, the Senate was a reflection of state government. So the senators were appointed by the state Congress. So the state Congress got together and said, yes, we have a Republican majority, so our 2 senators are going to be Republican, which meant that people cared a lot more about local elections, state elections, and the county elections and so on, because this was the way to have a majority in the Senate. And this was a perfect federalist system. And so, but now, if you want to just abolish the 17th Amendment, it's going to be very complicated, because you will need a supermajority in the Senate and in Congress, and in some cases you would need to have there is a process that is very complicated to do that. But at the same time, I don't know, just the thing that's saying the so-called SAVE Act, so the thing that saying that if you are a voter, you need to prove your citizenship and you need to prove with a voter ID, is being going through Congress, or I think Senate now. They have 49 senators that are co-sponsors of this bill, and so again, there could be filibustering and so on. So it's complicated to do that, but at the same time, it's very tricky. So how do you see that? The fact, the whole point of the filibustering and so on. I've seen that from a libertarian perspective, many people are quite on the fence on that, because it can be a way to stop a tyrannical government from implementing stuff that you don't really want, but at the same time, it can block the stuff that people actually voted for, because I think the situation is quite clear now.
It still amazes me how amazing the United States was set up. Alex, when he was talking about the Constitution, we have state constitutions on top of the federal Constitution. So we have so many different checks and balances that push and pull against each other. Unfortunately, we have lost a lot of the republic that we were supposed to be, and the 17th Amendment is a perfect example of that. There was, we elected House members. That was the branch of the government that was directly direct democracy. We elect our not direct democracy, but representative democracy. But then the Senate was supposed to be, a voice for the states. And that was lost, and so we've kind of democracy is something that our founding fathers warned us against, but for some reason that push. Well, I think it's not some reason. I think it's easier to manipulate and control the masses at a democracy than having the complicated system that the republic that we were originally founded in. So. This is a great conversation because I guess I didn't really look at it, from how valuable having constitutions are, and I can totally see in comparison to the UK where that benefits us a lot. On the flip side, a constitution is just a piece of paper. If you don't have a populace that is willing to uphold it, it's meaningless, and we've lost so much of the rights that were spelled out to protect individual liberty and from our Constitution because the populace has just been lulled to sleep with bread and circus and whatever else. It is amazing how crazy the world is right now, and we still have so many people out there that are asleep, their head is buried in their sand. Even just trying to talk to people locally is what do you think about this, and they immediately go, I don't pay attention to that, I don't want to even talk about it, let's talk about sports, let's talk about just more meaningless stuff, because they just don't, it's just so many people that are just, I don't want to hear. And
Luca's the sports journalist as well.
I know, guilty as charged. No, it's not just that. I think, Andy, is the whole point is that I think that it's very instructive, the whole idea behind the Second Amendment. So big 2E amendment here myself. So really think that this is the foundation of freedom. The fact of saying that you are able and not only to have an organized militia, as the letter of the amendment says, but well, you don't need to have a AR-15 to protect against intruders in your home. Yeah, I don't have that for that. I have that because if the government comes to my door and say, I'm taking away your freedom, I have the option of saying, hell no, you're not. You're not taking away my freedom. And this is the whole point. When I was still working in London, I went to the US, I had a tour in the South from a little bit of Georgia, mostly Alabama and North Florida, Panhandle. And I was staying at the home of some of the people, of the organizers, because obviously they didn't have a lot of money. And one of the guys was a former colonel of the army, and he had a massive gun collection. Being always a military guy and stuff, I was so happy. I would say, yeah, awesome, my God, you got a Mauser, crazy. I always go in the backyard and shoot. I came back to London into the newsroom.
I almost thought you were American for a second there.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I am the Italian redneck. My friends, they nick me that. They say, no, you've been wrong. You've been born in the wrong place, because my idea of fun is just going around in an ATV, fishing, and then shooting. So I'm very, very redneck from that point of view. I went back, and the people were looking at me as I was coming from Mars and saying, "Were you not scared?" I said, no, because guns don't shoot people. People shoot people. So if I'm staying with people that know exactly how to do it, and they're teaching me how to shoot a Mauser rifle, I'm not hurting anyone, because I know what I'm doing. They know what I'm doing, and I've never felt safer. I was in the Metroplex area in Texas, and there was a meeting, and as always, as this happened in Texas, they're in a barbecue place, and it was a big room. There were quite a few amount of people, 70, 80 people. And we went to get to the car, and it was dark. and there was no lights, and I felt quite unsafe. And I was just thinking, oh boy, someone comes here, I might be in trouble. Obviously, it raises the print and it shows that he had a 9mm gun. They said, yeah, you have no problems here. And I was just looking and said, oh, okay, is that okay? And they said, well, you know how many people back there were packing, said they were having a gun? And I said, I have no idea. He said, well, probably 80%. And I didn't feel absolutely unsafe because they were nice people. They knew how to defend themselves. And so the whole point is that if you're talking to people in Europe, this would be a nightmare. Oh, I'm in a place where so many people are armed. I've never felt safer in my life. There was one story and say, you know why Texas people wave at each other when they're crossing the road, when they're driving? Yeah, to show that they are not armed. And I was just thinking to myself, this is the greatest piece of legislation, but people have been working for years to say that, oh, this is dangerous. Think about the children. Think about that. And up until the 50s, you have to have gun training classes in school.
Yeah.
So you will have kids coming with their rifle, with their 22 rifle, whatever. So they will come in here to learn how to use weapons safely. And how this in 50 years has become completely different is just baffling.
Well, so much of that is how the idea of gun ownership is sold in the United States, especially with our mainstream media. That there is, America has this reputation of like, you walk outside your door and there's gunshots everywhere, and every school is getting shot up and stuff like that. And we have had a lot of school shootings, but the gun ownership or the availability of guns is not the cause of that. It's not the sole mitigating factor in that. It is the fact that our schools are not allowed to have armed security, and this is a known issue. You can go and talk to any anti-gun person and they know this as well. They know that, like, it's a lot easier to go shoot up a school because nobody's going to fight you. Nobody's going to shoot you before you get into the front door, And so I think that left-wing legislators, I think they keep it to where they can't properly protect schools. Well, let me go back a little bit. There's a term called soft target, and that's basically any building, any place that does not have any sort of armed resistance. And so the Pulse nightclub shooting, the Parkland, I think it was Parkland High School, Sandy Hook, these are all soft targets because they don't have armed security. So if you have a gun and you just have to kill people, those are your easiest targets because you can go in there, you can cause a lot of damage before the cops can get there. Because even in a situation like a school shooting, it's still going to take the cops 10, 15 minutes to get there, So I think a lot of left-wing legislators, they keep it to where you can't have armed protection around these schools, which we have millions of veterans who are trained to the gills on how to use any kind of firearm, who would be more than willing to say, yeah, absolutely, I will patrol school grounds to make sure that, and they're trained to do this stuff specifically, how to protect an area, and if we have tons of military vets who they would love to do this, but we don't, it's not allowed, it never gets to the point of being a reasonable solution. So then you have, our mainstream media outlets come in and they say, oh, look at this school shooting. It happened. Oh, it's totally senseless. If only that guy couldn't have gotten an AR-15. Well, you can make a pipe bomb with crap that you can buy from Home Depot. So if that guy really wants to kill people, he's going to kill people. Just because he has access to a gun, it's not going to change that, It makes way more sense to arm these soft targets and look in, and this is getting into a totally different topic, but but won't go down that rabbit hole.
No, but it's okay. I think the whole point is very simple. I think that you say, well, if you're a criminal, you will get a gun. I'm in Italy. In Italy, it's extremely complicated to get guns because you need to have permission upon permission upon permission. And so if you want to go to the shooting range, you will need to have a background check, but not only background check, but they will look into every detail, every stuff. You're allowed to have the gun, but it has to be disassembled. The ammunition has to be separate from the gun. You need to be able to carry it only from your residence to that specific shooting range. If I want to go to another shooting range, I need to have permission from the police. If you can do that, people get shot in Italy as well because criminals obviously don't care about rules. They always get guns. It's just the regular people don't get guns. But I was thinking in terms of the accident that happened in Minnesota, where Don Lemons and those other commies, they went into a church and disrupted the whole function and everything. I was just thinking to myself, this would never have happened back in Texas. Because it happened a few years ago. I don't know if you remember, where there was a couple of Islamic terrorists that wanted to go shoot up a church. I think it was in the Metroplex area. I can't remember if it was Fort Worth or Dallas. And obviously, the guys inside, they shot back. I think it happened, they injured a couple of people, but then the terrorists, they were killed because everybody in Texas is packing. So this is the whole point. It's saying, the Constitution states precisely that it's your inalienable right to own and operate a gun legally. But if you go to New York, it's impossible. This, again, it's just constitutions are important as long as they are enforced. And I think we had a problem with. Okay, so let's go on. He probably has an issue with the internet. So the whole idea I was having is that in terms of saying this whole freedom debate and stuff is that how libertarians are able to get over the point to say, as you were saying before, I think it was Dan that was saying that we tend to operate on the terms of ideals, and he's back. So we tend to operate in terms of ideals, while instead, if you are, oh crap, sorry fellas, it's just, I need to get the switcher.
By the way, while you were gone, Ben, we solved every problem.
Oh, beautiful.
No, I was just thinking in terms of saying, we're saying, us libertarians, we love to talk about ideals. We love to talk about great issues, how everyone is, if people went along with us, we're going to solve all the problems of the world, and I couldn't care less about what happens down the road in the council, so in the road that isn't working, or the park that is completely overrun by drug dealers, and I don't care about that. I'm thinking about, and the Fed, which would be awesome, by the way, but I digress. How can we get the conversation to a level that is palatable to people down the road? Because every time we have a conversation with people that are either from the right or from the left, it's the same. They say, yeah, it would be good, but you are impractical, you are never compromising, you are too idealistic and stuff. But then again, if you don't talk about the big stuff, you're never solving anything. I mean, in Argentina, Milei was saying very clearly, I will destroy the government, I will fire tens of thousands of people that are benefiting from the government. And he was saying, if you are an artist, you say you're an artist, but you get money from the government, you're not an artist, you're a public servant. Right. So you're not an artist, you're a mouthpiece, a propagandist for the government, because if you're getting money from the government, you're not an artist. So, but he was able to go from the very high level of saying, this is the stuff that we should do, to then have a plan. And I'm thinking that right now, us libertarians worldwide, we don't have a plan. I think Alex might have a plan. So I don't know.
Well, if I could real quick tack on to something that Ben mentioned earlier, is this sort of utopian ideal. So you use the word ideal, and I think the thing that libertarians really have to grapple with is the word ideal is not equivalent to the word real. Ideal does not mean the real world or real life, and I'm equally as bit as guilty of this sort of libertarian sin as any other libertarian, but like living in Ancapistan, because I fall on the anarchist side of libertarianism. I've been guilty of thinking like, yeah, everything totally works out in my head But how does that actually work out in real life? And when you talk to like a normal person, you know, a normal, not libertarian person, and you talk to them about like abolishing police, that does not register with regular people. That is a fantasy, you know. It all works out in our heads because we're thinking about like private security, and we're thinking about like how free markets work and stuff like that. We are 12 levels deep into how this actually works when a normal person hasn't even gotten to pass the word abolish, you know. And so it's something that we have to do is we have to rein ourselves in and say, okay, what is a realistic, achievable step that we could actually get right now, you know? And I think we have to start looking at libertarian philosophy as a direction, not a destination. You know, every opportunity that we get, we should push in that libertarian direction without being like, listen, it is absolute unfettered, unrestricted access to all guns for everybody right now or nothing. Can't do that. We have to be like, okay, how can we get more people to be able to defend themselves or to protect themselves or to protect their properties or their families or whatever? How, like, what's a reasonable step that we can take instead of being like, this is where we have to be right now? It's a direction, not a destination.
Yeah, I know. The whole point is saying the thing that everybody's looking at America and they're listening to the mainstream media. They say it's the Wild West. People are shooting each other. Yeah, if you go into the ghetto and there is a turf war going on between gangs, yes, they're shooting each other. They're shooting innocent people, but these are criminals. They're not regular people. And everyone seems to forget that the same kind of law applies also in Switzerland, which is one of the most free countries that you can ever imagine. And everybody's got the assault rifle. Cheese is great, by the way, and chocolate as well. But, you know, the whole point is that everyone is trained. Everyone is part of the army. And you have a assault rifle in your home and people are not going berserk and they're not shooting each other. But Switzerland hasn't had an invasion or a revolution since the 1300s. Right. So 700 years. Why? Because Hitler looked into Switzerland and said, if I go there, I will get massacred because they will start shooting from the mountains, from everywhere. You know, they have bases where the fighter jets, they are inside the mountain. They open the gate. They have a streak of highway that is completely flat. I was driving in Switzerland. I was saying, oh my God, it's really straight. That's ridiculous. And a friend of mine who's living in Switzerland said, yeah, because there is an air base over there. I said, where? Yeah, look, the mountain. They're inside there. And I was just thinking, crazy. But that's the point. Finland as well. They were under the Swedes for so long. They were invaded by the Soviet Union. And they said, no, everybody gets training. You will have shooting classes and everything. And they said, no, we will not be invaded again. And nobody talks about Finland. But, you know, Ben, the whole point that I was trying to make is that practical solutions. What could be a first step? Now that you are in a government position, you are a representative of your community, big or small, doesn't really matter. What is probably the most practical way to get people to understand that who is going to build the roads? Yeah, the same people that now build the roads, rather than they will not be paid by the local council, but they will be paid by people who live there. I don't know. You have an industrial area. You want to have a better road. The companies that are in the industrial estate, they will pay some money and have the road paved. There you go. Who's going to build the roads? I don't know. Is this the most practical way? Yeah.
So the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party in the United States, they are they really kind of push the, local, focus on local. One of the frustrating things that I have found in the Libertarian Party is you have a lot of keyboard warriors. You don't have a lot of people who are actually willing to do the work. So until you move people from, just posting crap on Twitter to joining a local planning commission, running for a local race. So I sit on my local planning commission and I'm elected to my local council. Those are positions that, it's one meeting a month. and you can make a ton of impact on your local area. And so we spend so much time focused on, running for a governorship or running for presidents or running for Senate, just positions that they're, from a political party, the Libertarians have no chance. And instead of spending all of our time and effort focused on those type of races, we need to get involved locally. We need to, you don't even have to be elected to some of these you can just be appointed to. And that's where you need to start. And maybe you do have aspirations for a larger office. You got to build your resume. No one, or very few people, obviously Donald Trump would be an exception to the rule, but you don't just walk into a high political office off the street. You have to show a resume that says, I've earned it. I know what I'm doing. I have support. So that's one of the things that I'm constantly kind of beating the drums on is get involved locally. Just check out your local municipality, your city, your township, your county. There are positions that are open, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to make a lot of positive change.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really important thing, because I'm thinking in terms of this works in America, but I think it also works probably better in the UK, because most people don't realize exactly how disastrously run are many councils. Because I've seen there is a guy on X that I follow. I forget his name. Is Cunningham, I think. He's from London, and is looking at the balance sheets of all the local councils, and you will see that they have hundreds of millions of debt, and they keep spending, and they keep wasting money, and they keep making silly decisions, and they keep financing NGOs and lawyers and translation services and all sorts of ridiculous stuff. And I was thinking to myself, hold on a second, why isn't there a libertarian representative in that council, in that ward, that says, hold on, guys, this doesn't work. Can we do something different? I think, Alex, this is really important. This is actually probably the key to just having people get beyond what the media tells about us, because they say, oh yeah, libertarians are not practical and stuff. But if you go to a town meeting, a town hall, and you see someone that says, yeah, I'm a libertarian, this doesn't work, here is my solution, maybe people will go there and say, well, actually it makes sense. Maybe next time there is an election, like there is the by-election up in Manchester, I think that you just announced, was it yesterday, the name of the candidate for the by-election? Yeah, maybe people will listen to him and say, I mean, makes sense. So the main problem is that if no one stands up, everybody thinks that they're alone. This is a real problem, I think.
Yeah, I would just tack on to what Ben was saying earlier about starting locally. The issue we've got at the moment is they've cancelled local elections, so that's a little bit of a sticking point. But those that are going ahead, we are going to challenge, and absolutely, you build relationships with people at the local level, and you make a meaningful difference. So we actually have, he's not formally representing the Libertarian Party, but we do have someone on a parish council in Lincolnshire who is involved with the party, who is a libertarian, and he's doing a lot of great things there. So that's one way we can build up. But the difference we have with the US Libertarian Party is most people just haven't heard of us. So we had one of these, on X you have these people who are posting constant opinion polls, who's going to win this, who are the candidates there. And they posted that Dan Clark is our candidate for the Gorton and Denton by-election. And the first comment was, we have a Libertarian Party in the UK. The next comment is, what is libertarianism? So we have quite a bit of a way to go in just creating that public image, which is why it's fantastic that we've managed to get Dan to stand in the by-election, because that's going to be a national competition. It's going to be on the news, and there's going to be millions of people seeing the word Libertarian Party on the website, BBC, on the ballot paper, etc. So that's one thing the party hasn't done very much recently is challenge by-elections, because yes, it's £500, which is a lot of money for a party our size, but we've done a GoFundMe and we're good to go. So that is one thing that we're doing. I'll just throw in an advert, if I may, again. Sorry, gentlemen. Next Saturday, 7th of February, we're doing a canvas session in Gorton for our candidate, Dan Clark. So we're going to have some posters, we're going to hand out some leaflets, and then we're going to go back to the pub to refresh ourselves afterwards, which should be good fun. So that's 2 p.m. at the Wagon and Horses in Gorton. Full details on Facebook and social media. I just wanted to touch again on we've had this whole pragmatism versus idealism debate, and we've heard a lot of great things about how we can do that. So if we talk, Andy was saying a direction rather than a destination. So we spoke, Andy, you kindly had me on the We Love the State podcast back in the summer, and we spoke about how gun rights in the UK, if you start talking about them, are political suicide. And I'm not going to say now here that the Libertarian Party of the United Kingdom is fully in favour of removing all regulations on guns, because we've got a by-election in a week, and it would cost us. And personally, I do think there are concerns with public carrying, for example. People, for whatever reason, might feel afraid if they know that people are walking around armed, in the supermarket. Is that a violation of their right not to feel afraid in public, potentially, if you want to look at a very sort of leftist view of the NAP? But Andy mentioned direction, not destination. So one thing we could do, for example, on a pragmatic level is, hang on, go back to the ideal. We're libertarians. We believe in individual autonomy. We believe in property rights. There is no logical reason why the United Kingdom couldn't legalize firearms on private property. If someone breaks into my house, I should have every right to use lethal force against them. And to placate the other side, to keep people happy and safe in public, you could say, you're only allowed a gun at home. You're allowed it outside your home if you're going to the shooting range, or you've just bought it from the shop, or you're moving house. That's not full libertarianism, but it's moving in that direction that we've suggested, on a pragmatic basis, that we could do. But yeah, the ideals of libertarianism are clear. I don't think there's anything wrong with being an idealist, but as long as we can present these views pragmatically, which is what Dan's going to do for us up in Gorton in the by-election.
Yeah, I think I want to see the signs like I saw in Texas, which are amazing. There are signs that are pushed out and say, we don't dial 911 with a rifle. You say, you come into my property, say your prayers, because you're going to meet your maker very soon. So I am for that approach to libertarianism. That is, my house is my castle. You step in, the government has nothing to do with it. But then again, I'm in Europe, where if you defend yourself, that's a problem. There was a case that happened a couple of days ago, just to tell you exactly what kind of nightmare we're all living in. So there is a jewelry shop owner, has been, the fifth time in a couple of months, there's thieves going there. They were holding his family at gunpoint, and he was in the back office. He took out his gun and came out, and the thieves ran away. They have stolen a bunch of jewelry. He goes out, he just says, the thief points the gun at him, he shoots them, kills two of them, which is very unfortunate. But he has been now jailed for 15 years because according to the law, that wasn't okay. It wasn't okay. He was trying to get his property back, and the guy was pointing the gun at him, but the judge said, no, you're not allowed to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, this is, the government is constantly defending people who violate the law, criminals, because they want us to feel scared, unsafe. So I would feel much more safe if I knew that people in the supermarket had some firearm with them, rather than a guy comes out with a knife, just stabs me and just walks away, because nobody is going to do anything. Because this is what happens. If you go to a train station, I think yesterday or a couple of days ago in Hamburg, Germany, there was this guy that was completely insane, and a migrant from Africa, but that's not really the point. He just pushed He just grabbed a woman when the train was coming. They both get killed. And this happens. In New York, I think people are pushing on the subway. They're just doing that. And I'm thinking to myself, if there is a deranged guy that is threatening my life, if I'm not able to defend myself, I would rather some other good citizen come and defend me. If I'm not able to, I would rather defend myself. But this again, it's a next problem. I don't think we're there yet. But in general, I would think that this is a conversation that is worth having, because being afraid and thinking that daddy government is going to do everything for you is actually the way how you end up in chains and you end up completely enslaved, or in 15-minute cities like Oxford, where, I don't know if you heard, guys, the Oxford in north of London, they are going to have these 15-minute cities, which is Agenda 2030, the whole UN stuff. And so if you are living, the city will be divided in 6 areas. And if you want to go from one area to the other, you need a permit. And if you do that for more than 100 days every year, you get a fine, because you're not allowed to move. You have to stay there. You will have everything you need. You will live in a pod, you will eat the bugs, you will own nothing and be happy. So this is where we're going. But, fellas, this has been great. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you all. And thank you for being here. I'll let you have the rest of your day while I'll have a football match to cover later. Football, not soccer, guys. This again. I'm a big American football guy, but in general here, football is soccer. So thanks, Andy. Thanks, Andy Koons. If you want to check him, We Love the State podcast, you'll be able, where people can find you. You are on YouTube, Rumble.
We post on YouTube. I've been recently putting a couple of clips on TikTok. Yeah, if you want to find me specifically, I'm on X at Andy_Koons, or if you want to look me up on TikTok. I don't really do a lot of political content on TikTok that much anymore. But if you want to check me out, it's at Andy Koons.
Obviously, lovely. Ben DeJong, so again, we can follow you on that. And any other social where people can find you?
Yeah, so picture this. 1979 is kind of my handle on X and on Instagram. That's where I'm on most often. And then you check out We Love the State podcast.
Okay, awesome. Alex, again, we're told next Saturday, again, where people can go, where people can meet. Guys, it's not scary. Just let me I'm going full screen for once. Guys, doing canvassing is not scary. I've been doing it. I've been in politics in Italy for a bunch. I've done that. I know it sounds scary. It's not scary. I did it in America as an Italian when I was collaborating with Ted Cruz down in Texas. Going door to door, it's not scary. You're with friends. It's an awesome day out. You get to meet a lot of people. You get to hear what people actually think, because you think that people around you know nothing about politics, but they have real issues. Nobody goes door to door. Labor don't care. Conservatives don't care. Lib Dems, they only care in the councils where they are. People have never heard of you. You will not be shouted out. Maybe people will go there and say, not interested. That's the worst that can happen to you. It's an awesome day out. If you can, really, just spend an afternoon doing that, because this is how we change the country. This is how we can change the United Kingdom. Again, Alex, I've taken way too much of your time. Go ahead.
So it's the Wagon and Horses pub in Gorton, 2 p.m. next Saturday, 7th of February. As Luca said, it's great fun. Just turn up. You don't even need to speak to anyone if you don't want to. Just put leaflets through the letterboxes. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have a nice pint and maybe go for a curry afterwards as well. See you there.
Okay, awesome. Again, this is another thing. Probably we'll have it. Door hangers. Just, Alex, do that. Make them print out door hangers, because I've seen in Texas, they actually work. So if you go to a door, you knock and they're not in, you hang something like in the hotel to the thing, just door hangers. Actually, they are amazing. They work great. Maybe for next by-election. Yeah. That's a good idea. And again, thank you all for being here. Obviously, again, all of you, thanks for being here. Hopefully, if you know someone that could be interested in this way of doing information, in this kind of conversation, just share the link with them, because, you know, mainstream media, they're just lying nowadays. They don't even care. They just lie. They put up blatant lies after lies after lies. So having this space where we are able to talk with people that think that another way of doing politics is possible is really fundamental. I hope I'll see you there. Just share the link, do a thumbs up, leave a comment if you like, and obviously we'll see you next Saturday for episode 9 of Give Freedom a Chance. Thank you all. Have a nice weekend and have a nice